it's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Jordan Goodman, America's money answer man. He has spent the past 40 years focused on one mission, to help Americans do better with their money. In a career spanning newspapers, magazines, books, radio, television, live events, teleseminars, and the internet at moneyanswers.com, he has helped millions of people to solve their financial problems and realize their financial dreams. An honors graduate of Amherst College, Jordan has just received his master's degree from the Columbia University School of Journalism in 1977 when he launched an award-winning consumer-oriented newspaper, Info, which reached 4 million readers every week. That early foray into consumer journalism soon led to an 18-year stint at Money, the foremost personal finance magazine in the United States, where Jordan reported and wrote on every aspect of personal finance. During his tenure at Money, he also became a regular presence on radio and television programs around the country. When Jane Pauley and Brian Gumbel of the Today Show wanted to refute some of the more dubious strategies of financial guru Charles Givens in 1986, it was Jordan they asked to face down Givens. When Ted Koppel needed a financial expert to explain to Nightline viewers the implications of the stock market crash of October 1987, which was 4 months after I graduated from dental school, May 11, 87, it was Jordan to whom he turned. While at Money, Jordan also began to write the first of his 14 highly acclaimed books on personal finance, the Barron's Dictionary of Finance and Investment Terms, which Jordan co-authored with John Downs, has been translated into Spanish, German, Russian, Japanese, and Chinese, and has sold over 3 million copies worldwide. Now, in its 9th edition, it is considered a classic in the field and staple of the syllabi of college personal finance and business courses, MBA classes, and security training seminars. In the 33 years since the dictionary's first release, John has also written Barron's Finance Investment Handbook, Everyone's Money Book, the Everyone's Money Book series, Credit Stocks, Bonds, Mutual Funds, Reading Between the Lies, How to Avoid Becoming a Victim of the Wall Street Scandal, Master Your Money Type, Fast Profits in Hard Times, Master Your Debt, The Ultimate Guide to Student Loans. It's been 20 years. Your bio goes on for almost 4 pages. I want to end it there. You like talking to dentists. In fact, you were just in Salt Lake City, last week?
Last week, correct. Yeah, so I spoke about 2 years ago at the Seattle Study Club National Symposium, about 700-something dentists, and then a lot of people liked it and wanted me to come to their local clubs. So I've done it all over the country. I love to speak to dentists. I think I understand them pretty well and what their financial questions and needs are. So I'm going to try to bring today a lot of specific resources and strategies they may not have heard about based on what I've been hearing from the dentists, what they're interested in.
Well, go. I know, you're talking to several different groups. The young kids, they're throwing a pity party because they got $300,000 of student loans. Some of them up to $400,000. Then they go buy a dental office for $750,000. Right. So before they know it, they're 30 years old and they're $1 million in debt. Is that a good thing, a bad thing? What do you think about that? Their position?
I would not buy a dental office that young, frankly. I think you should wait till you're a little bit more established and work on the student loan debt. You're right. I did one of these events in Las Vegas. There was a couple. Each of them had $500,000 in dental school debt. One of them was an orthodontist. I mean, it's just unbelievable the amount of debt people in. So let me do some things to start right off with helping them with the student loans because it's massive. You're right, Howard. So first thing you can do is consolidate them. You've got a whole bunch of federal loans at different interest rates. Consolidate them into one at the lowest possible interest rate. And a website for that would be consolidatecollege.com. Then the second thing, a lot of people don't realize you can actually refinance your student loans to a much lower interest rates.
What was that website?
Consolidatecollege.com.
Consolidatecollege.com. Is that your website?
No, it's not. These are places that I recommend, but no, this is not my own website. I mean, I have these websites at my website, and moneyanswers.com.
Moneyanswers.com is your main website.
Right. But I like to help other people and refer them to other places that I know are really specialists in these areas. So consolidation is the first thing. And then people don't realize they can refinance their student loans to typically in the 2 to 3% range. You combine federal loans, which may be in the 4 to 6% range, with private loans, which can be 10% plus, into one, 2 to 3%. A website to help you there is called Credible. The website is credible.com, Credible, credible.com, and then put /money answers. I know it's me that way. You get $200 off your first payment. And Credible itself doesn't refinance loans, but it's like a clearinghouse that has 5 or 6 different places, credit unions, different places, and then they compete for your business to refinance your loan to 2 to 3%. So it doesn't make the student loans disappear, but paying them off at 2% is better than 6 or 10%, and they'll hopefully pay it off a little bit quicker.
So why do they name it credible.com? Why not incredible.com?
Well, because they're credible. The amount of debt that people have is incredible, I guess you might say.
Well, one way to look at it is, debt is other people's money. And these dental students that are crying, they could have got a job at McDonald's for 10, 12 bucks an hour, say work from age 16 to 30 and got a dental school in cash. But only about 20 countries do you have access to other people's money. So they got all these student loans. They became a doctor, and now they get to pay them back with doctor's wages. Was that a good move, or do you think it was not a good move?
Well, I mean, it's what their passion is. To make it into dental school is hard enough as it is, and then to make it through is really hard. But I mean, it's something they really wanted to do. So you can't deny people their passion. But just the finances are much different today, Howard, than in the past, because the amount of debt is so much more, and because it's so much more expensive to buy into dental practice, in many cases with debt. I mean, the existing baby boomer dentists now, who might be in their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they didn't have close to this amount of debt when they were going through dental school, and they were able to buy into a practice early, and now they've got a lot of equity. And I mean, a lot of the meetings I went to, they say, who am I going to sell this to? Who can afford whatever, $700,000, $1 million for this dental practice? So they're concerned about selling. In many cases, what they do is they sell out to these dental service organizations, these DSOs, that buy them up, and then they become employees. And a lot of younger dentists, the same thing. They don't want to take on that huge amount of debt for a practice for uncertain future. So they're, in effect, becoming employees working for the DSOs as well. So the economics have really changed dramatically recently.
Well, my best advice to these kids is that they can marry more money in a minute than they can earn in a lifetime. So like that guy, why did he marry an orthodontist, $500,000 in vet? He should have married an 80-year-old lady who was a widow, sitting on $100 million of bonds. So your Twitter is at GoodmanJord.com, at GoodmanJord. I just retweeted your last tweet. Jordan Goodman talks with financial advisor and investment specialist Josh Jelinski about the importance and value of holistic financial planning. I just sent that to my 24,000 homies. Thanks for following me on Twitter. And by the way, you got a podcast.
I do.
You should upload that on Dentaltown.
Absolutely, I will. It's called The Money Answers Show.
Yeah.
I've been doing it for about 11 years. Every month. Josh Jelinski, what you just mentioned, was the show that I just did yesterday. He's a guy called the Financial Quarterback, and he has a national radio show called the Financial Quarterback Radio Show. So I interviewed him on my show. Yeah, it's on what's called the Voice America Business Network, which is actually based in the Phoenix area where you are as well. But it's a national show, and I've been doing it for 11 years, and it's helped a lot of people. Absolutely.
So he's in Phoenix?
Voice America is based in Phoenix, the network that my show is on. Josh Jelinski is based in the New York area, but I'm just saying the network where I run my show is in the Phoenix area, correct?
And it's called Voice of America.
Voice America, no of.
Oh, okay, because Voice of America was the government military program. Okay, Voice America, huh? So, yeah, I wish you would upload your podcast on Dentaltown. Everybody tells me their views on iTunes. So they found it on the Dentaltown app on their way to work, because sometimes they open up that app. I put the first podcast on Dentaltown, and now there's 60 people putting their show up there, and the townies love it. Because they get in their car in the morning, they got an hour commute. Most podcasters only do like one show a week, so they need to follow lots of shows to get their hour commute each way. Yeah. So dentists. Are their financials any different than other people? I mean, what have you learned from lecturing to dentists so much?
Their cash flow is better. The cash flow is better, but my experience is they don't spend enough time or effort getting their financial life together in the right way. In many cases, at least in my experience, the spouses take care of the money, which can be a good thing or a bad thing. But the dentists are not that involved in the money because they're so involved in their practice, and they're in the mouth all the time. So they're not thinking about money the way they should be. So that's why I like to set up automatic systems, so without them having to think about it, the right things are automatically happening instead of the wrong things, which is what typically happens. I'll just give you an example. Income. A lot of people have, a lot of dentists have a lot of money sitting in cash, earning zero. CDs, money market funds, savings accounts, both individually and within their practice as well. They've just got a lot, because they've got those cash flow going through, sitting there earning nothing. The banks love them. The banks think they're doing a great job, but there's lots of things they can do to make that money earn much more for them in a passive kind of way. I'll give you an example of something I'm doing, which is called secured real estate funds, because that's a way of earning an 8% yield over a 1-year time frame. You can get monthly checks if you like, automatically deposited in your checking account, or you can reinvest it and have your money compounding at 8% completely passively. You don't have to think about it whatsoever. It's just happening very safely as well. A website for that is securedrealestatefunds.com. They've got a phone number too, 888-444-2102. And what they're doing, Howard, is they're lending money short-term to commercial real estate projects of all types. Could be medical offices, could be apartment buildings, assisted living, student housing, just all kinds of things, because these places have a hard time getting financing with the Dodd-Frank regulations these days. So it's a way of them getting money quicker. They pay it back within a year. It's secured by real estate. The maximum they lend is 70% of the value of the real estate, widely diversified across the country. So there's a passive way and no commissions. You give them, the minimum's $5,000. You give them $5,000, $5,000 is invested. So, and you can invest online. There's an Invest Now button. You don't even have to talk to anybody if you don't want to. So there's a way of earning 8% over 1 year completely passively. That would help a lot of dentists.
A lot of dentists, when they come out of school, they don't know if they should be paying off debt, student loans, practice mortgage, or putting money in the bank for retirement. How do you coach debt versus savings?
Do it both at the same time. Because what's very easy to do is you put all your cash flow towards the debt, and they'll say, well, I'm going to start investing once my debt's paid off. Well, that means you're 55. If you've lost your entire life to invest. The way I like to put it is, as your debt goes down, your equity should be going up. It's a process. It's not an event that one day the debt's paid off and therefore you start saving and investing. Okay, because chances are, particularly we talked about refinancing your student loans down to 2%. If you invest, you're going to get a much higher return than 2%, and therefore you're going to come out ahead by having that money growing for you. So it's financial, it's also psychological. Now, you want that sense of your money growing for you, what I call positive compounding, which feels good. Your money is producing more money. I just gave you a way to earn 8% compounding, as opposed to the negative compounding of I've got this interest piling up on me all the time. So it's psychologically, it feels better to have your money growing for you. So don't do it one or the other. Get your debt down while your equity goes up.
You know, one of the hardest things for dentists, physicians, and lawyers is that their egos are so big. So, you know, they have $300,000 student loans. They buy a $700,000 office or $1 million in debt. And then when they go buy a house, they had to get the trophy house. And it's like, dude, I mean, what is there any part of your life where you live within your means? So if someone just asks you, they're looking at a house. It's their first, you know, they're looking for a house. They got their practice. What should their pity be? Their payments, interest, taxes. You know, some people say it should be a third. Some people say it should be a fourth. What do you think principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and maintenance should be?
A maximum of 30% of their income, their take-home income, should be for the whole real estate combined. So interest, principal, insurance, property taxes, all those things combined. Because otherwise what happens is the house owns you. You don't own the house, basically. So, yes.
And these dentists, they always get a 30-year mortgage on their house. What are your thoughts on 30 versus 15?
Well, I've got a better way to do it, actually. First of all, I can save you money. Dentists, I can save them money on the mortgage. There's something called the Heroes Come First program, which helps heroes, and dentists are considered heroes, doctors, EMT, police, firemen, any kind of people in the service profession. You go to the website heroescomefirst.com.
Heroescomefirst.com.
At that website, they can save money on points and closing costs and fees and all the things, interest rates on the mortgages. And when they buy a home or sell a home, they get a rebate of part of the real estate agent's commission, which can be significant as well if they qualify as a hero. And by the way, everybody in their office the dental office staff can count as a hero as well. So that's the first thing, get a better mortgage. And then the second thing, I would say take out a 30-year mortgage, but pay it off in 5 to 7 years. Now, there's a strategy you'll never hear about from banks, which is called mortgage optimization, which literally allows you to pay off a mortgage 25 years sooner than you ever thought possible on your existing level of income. Let me explain how that works. There's a website related to that too, truthinequity.com, truthinequity.com. So here's how it works. You say you have your first mortgage, and then you get a home equity line of credit, what's called a HELOC, related to us as a second. HELOC is liquid. You can put money in, you can take it out whenever you like with no fees, no limits whatsoever. So you take out the HELOC and you do a block of the HELOC right towards the first, okay? And you're starting to pay down the first. You keep your income in the HELOC, moving your balance down literally every day. And you pay the HELOC off in, 9 months, a year, and then you do it again, and you can pay off your first. Let me give you a simple example of how it might work, Howard, okay? So say you had a house worth $300,000, just making up a number here, and say your first mortgage was $1,000. You had at 4%, you had a good rate on your first. You would take out a HELOC for maybe $50,000. You just open it up so it's free and clear. You would write a check on that $50,000 HELOC towards the first. So instead of owing $200, you now owe $150. Right? You're with me?
Yep.
Okay. And then you would keep your income going into that HELOC so that $50,000 is paid off, 9 months, however long it takes. As your money keeps going in there, you're pushing the balance down every day. Then you do it again. You write another $50,000 check on the HELOC. So instead of $150, you now owe $100. You do that twice more. Your first is now paid off in, say, 4 years. Then you pay off the HELOC. And in 5 years or so, you are completely mortgage-free. Isn't that better to have no mortgage instead of this huge albatross hanging over your head for 30 years? See, with a traditional mortgage, you make the same payment every month for 30 years, and most of it is going towards interest for the first 10, 15 years. You're making very, very little progress on the principal because your money, your cash flow is sitting in the checking account, zero. Right? So here, your money is sitting in the HELOC, pushing your balance down every day. So that's what's called mortgage optimization. The free website, truthinequity.com. You put in what's called a personal profile. You put in your income, your expenses, your house value, your mortgage, all those things. And it's going to say, okay, based on what you're doing today, it's going to take you 28 and a half years to pay off your mortgage, however long it is. And based on the numbers you just gave us, it'll be 5.6 years, however it comes out to be. And they show you step by step how to do it. So that's transformational for dentists, is to pay their mortgage off literally 25 years faster than they ever thought possible.
So another thing on Dental Town, it's not a news feed like Twitter and Facebook and all that. It's message boards. I like message boards. I don't like the endless news feed. You can't search anything. So when you go to one of the 50 categories is finance, and when you go to finance, there's a big argument on, do you pay a financial advisor to manage all this, or do you go index funds like Vanguard?
Well, I mean, in the long run, most index funds are going to do better than the financial advisors, and you save a lot in fees. So if you've got some really great financial advisor who's beating the market consistently, fine, put some in there. But I would think for most dentists who are not going to spend a lot of time on this, 4 index funds is all you need. S&P 500, mid-cap index, small-cap index, international index. Done. Okay? Just make it simple. And you're getting the big caps, you're getting the medium, you're getting the small, you're getting international flavor. That portfolio is going to outperform the vast majority of actively managed funds at much lower cost. You could do an exchange-traded fund, like SPY would be the S&P 500. You could do a Vanguard or Fidelity mutual fund. But something like that is simple, dollar-cost averaging, keep adding to it. And I'm just trying to make it simple, and I think you'll do really well with that long-term, Howard.
I know you probably don't want to be asked this question, but I have to ask it. Cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin, they even have one called Dentacoin.
Yes.
Out of the Netherlands, and there's some zealots on Dental Town that think this is the end all, the next big thing, and other people think it's the tulip bulb era of the 1600s, where Sir Isaac Newton lost all of his money. He wrote the book. He wrote the book on what was his book called? It was about calculus. I think it was 1687. It was 300 years before I graduated from dental school, and he took all that money, invested it in tulip bulbs, and lost it, which is why, if you look for a picture of what my professor said was the smartest man that ever lived, you only get a headshot of him. There's only a head. You know why? It comes from the saying, that'll cost you an arm and a leg. Because before photography, painters charged by the body part. So if you were multimillionaire George Washington, it was full body with your dog and the horse in the background. But for the smartest man in the world, Sir Isaac Newton, Principles of Mathematica, 1687, he lost all of his money in tulip bulbs. So is Dentacoin and Bitcoin tulip bulbs, or is it a real deal?
There are some tulip bulb cryptocurrencies, but Bitcoin is not one of them, okay? It's not going to zero. It's got a real purpose in life, which is that people want to do transactions over the so-called blockchain that is secure, supposedly secure, although they do get hacked, that is instant, and it's outside the traditional currency system. People want to do that. So just because the price came down from 19,000 to 8,000 or whatever it is now doesn't mean it's not used for Bitcoin. Okay, so but any money that you as a dentist are going to put into Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies absolutely should be money you can afford to lose. Okay, people are doing crazy things, Howard. They're taking out cash advances against their credit cards to do this. Don't do that. They're taking out mortgages against their house. Don't do that kind of thing. It should be money you can afford to lose. But I think in the long run, it is going to go up. Now, what's changed in the last month or so is that the regulators are really starting to get in there. In 2017, it was just a complete Wild West. There was no regulation whatsoever. All kinds of crazy things, including all kinds of frauds going on as well. So it's becoming more legitimized, which I think is a good thing. For example, in December, they started trading futures and options on Bitcoin in Chicago. And that gave a certain legitimacy to the market, and those futures are working just fine. On the other hand, there's one called CoinCheck in Japan that lost $570 million because it didn't have adequate security. So people got ripped off from that. So it's still a little bit of the Wild West. Let me tell you a few ways to play it. If you want to play, again, with money you can afford to lose, a pure stock on Bitcoin is called Bitcoin Investment Trust. The symbol for that, GBTC. A year ago it was about 200. It went up to about 3,000. Then it went down to about 2,000. And then it split 20 for 1. So now each share is about $20 a share, something like that. So that's a pure play on Bitcoin. Wildly volatile, but at least have some of it. You can do the exchanges. The two biggest ones are Coinbase and Gemini. You go on there, set up an account, and then you can buy and sell all these different currencies. The new one that's coming is called Robinhood. Robinhood has been out there, and now it's starting to, I think they've got about 1 million customers on trading currencies. So that's a direct way of doing it. And then the indirect way are the companies that benefit from the whole cryptocurrency craze. I'll just give you two examples. NVIDIA, NVIDIA, makes the chips that go into all the Bitcoin mining farms. And that stock has gone from a year ago about 40 to about 240. It's gone up dramatically. They make the chips that go into all kinds of things. Video games, cryptocurrency farms, driverless cars, cloud computing, everything that's growth industry, NVIDIA. So that's a kind of indirect way. Another one's called Overstock.com. They have a division called the Medici division that is doing cryptocurrency exchanges as well. So it's not an area you want to, it's a risk area, but it's not something you want to kind of ignore because it's not going away. It's just a very volatile area.
There's another question under finance on Dental Town. It says, how much money, what percent of your income should you be saving? Less than 5%, 5 to 10%, 10 to 20%, or over 20?
If you can do 10 to 15%, with the amount of debt that a lot of dentists have, I think you'll be doing just fine. The average American saves 5% or less. Now, the way to do it is as automatic as possible. Now, if your income is okay, you could do a Roth IRA. You can do up to $5,500 for a regular Roth under age 50, $6,500 a year over age 50. Then the money grows tax-free. I would put that in first. Then if you don't qualify for that, a traditional IRA, certainly max out a 401k. If you can offer that to your employees, you could do a Roth 401k and have that through your employer. That's a wonderful thing. There's all kinds of pension plans that you can do as well. If you don't save for yourself, Howard, nobody's going to do it for you. Okay, so you want to set it up. I'd like to say saving and investing is a habit, not an accident. It's not an event. It doesn't just happen once. It's setting up something that's happening on a regular basis. And if you could put between 10-15% of your income aside, you'll do just fine.
So you lectured at the prestigious National Seattle Study Club meeting, and then that prompted a lot of Seattle study clubs to have you come lecture to their group. What other unique? What have you learned from working with dentists? What other unique things do they have about?
I find, again, they just don't pay enough attention to it. But if they're very smart, and to get through dental school and everything they do, they really have to understand things. They just don't spend enough time focusing on this particular area. A small amount of additional focus has huge payoffs. Just look at what we've talked about so far. We've given them a way to earn 8% passively. We've given them a way to pay their mortgages off, in 5 years instead of 30 years. Just a small change makes a huge difference in their financial lives. I'll give you another example of something that they are not missing out on in many cases. A lot of dentists, particularly older ones, maybe those 60 plus, have life insurance policies they don't need anymore. And what they do is they let them lapse. Total waste. They could be selling those life insurance policies literally for hundreds of thousands of dollars in what's called the life settlement market that they don't even know exists. Again, life insurance agents are never going to tell you about this. The insurance companies are real happy to let those life insurance policies lapse. But here's how it works. So say you had $1 million policy, and say you're 65, something like that. You sell it. You could sell it for maybe $300,000, something like that. The people who buy the policy for $300,000, when you die, they become the beneficiaries. They get $1 million, right? So they're willing to wait a while to triple their money. Meanwhile, you get $300,000 right now. You don't have to pay the premiums anymore, and you can invest that for your own retirement. So it's a win-win for both sides. There's a website for that called fundinglife.com, and they basically put the buyers and sellers of life insurance policies together.
Did you get that?
It's a dramatic change.
What was it, fundinglife.com?
Fundinglife.com is the website for that, correct. And they have more buyers than they have sellers right now. So if you have an insurance policy and you can sell it, you'll do really, really well, because there's a lot of buyers competing to buy those life insurance policies. And frankly, the older you are and the sicker you are, the more money you're going to get, because the people buying the policies would rather that you not stick around very long, right? So if you've got a heart condition or something like that, that just raised how much you're going to get for your policy by $100,000 or so.
A lot of the podcasters are still in dental school, about 25%. I always say, hey, shoot me an email, howard@dentaltown.com. Tell me who's out there listening. 25% are still in dental school. Almost all are under 30. I only get like one email a week that says, dude, I'm as old as you. I'm 55 with 2 grandkids walking and 2 in the oven. So they don't know what the difference between a 401k and a Roth is. Can you go back to dental kindergarten and explain that?
So a 401k is where you put in money pre-tax from your paycheck, and it goes into this 401k. It grows tax deferred, but when you take it out in retirement, it's taxed at that point. So you get a current tax benefit. Your salary is lowered by that amount, so you pay less tax. It grows tax deferred, but you pay tax later. Okay, a Roth IRA, you're putting in money that's already been taxed. You're putting in after-tax dollars, but the money grows tax-free forever. So no matter how much you earn on it, you get to keep all of it. When you take the money out in retirement, no taxes whatsoever. So it's 2 different ways. That's why the Roth is better, because I would say I like to tax the seed, not the harvest. Okay, with a Roth, you're taxing the seed. The money going into it is being taxed, but whatever it produces is not being taxed. Whereas with a 401k, you're not taxing the seed, but you're taxing the harvest many years in the future when you take it out.
Well, don't you think that a country that has $20 trillion of debt and historically the lowest tax rates ever, that someday they're going to have to raise taxes and pay down debt?
I agree.
So
all the more reason why you want to have the seed taxed now, because when the harvest gets taxed at higher tax rates, I agree with you. You're going to get a lot less of it.
I don't like to talk about politics, religion, sex, or violence, but from your point of view, a money deal, does the national debt of $20 trillion and the fact that this year we'll add another $1 trillion in debt, do you think that's going to be a really bad deal someday, or do you think it's sustainable?
I think it's sustainable. It's not great, but the situation we're in right now, the tax cut that was put in at the end of 2017 is clearly stimulating the economy. And that means more jobs and more income. That's the only way kind of out of this, is to kind of grow your way out of it to some extent. So it's not great, and we're adding to the deficit. The budget they just put through adds another $300 billion. If we have an infrastructure project on top of that, it's more billions. But I'd rather do that, try to grow our way out of it, than kind of stay in the very low growth environment we're in before. Compared to other countries, we have a lot of debt, but compared to Japan or China or Italy or Spain or lots of places, we have a lot less debt as a percent of GDP than those other places. So there's just a lot of debt around the world. We're growing, at least, because of it right now.
What do you think of these young dental students? They come out of school, they get a job as an associate. You know, they're making $175,000 a year. They say they want to own their own practice someday, but they go buy a home first. What do you think of that?
Well, it's a matter of priorities. I mean, the advantage of buying a home is you get to build equity over time. You get tax deductions, and hopefully get a nice place to live. But I agree with you. Don't buy too big a bigger home than you really need, because that's where all your resources are going. Buying a dental practice is a major long-term investment. I think you might wait a little bit. Don't buy it when you're 30. Buy it when you're 40, or when you're more financially stable and able to do that, because I think people have just taken on too much debt by buying a home and a dental practice at the same time. I agree with you.
So what do you think of these kids today coming out of dental school and buying their first house on an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage? How does that sit with you?
There's a risk to that, because rates have gone up. I think will go up more. The 30-year fixed rate mortgage had been below 4% for a long time. Now it's about 4.75%. I think it's going to go over 5%. I mentioned before the heroescomefirst.com is a way of getting the interest rate down on those. But yes, I agree with you. If you do an adjustable rate mortgage today, you're taking a lot of risk. I mean, in general, the direction of interest rates is clearly up, because the economy is getting stronger, because the Federal Reserve is raising rates, because of concerns about inflation. So if I were to get a mortgage today, I would try to lock in a fixed rate mortgage and not worry about an ARM.
I think I was very lucky in the fact that I graduated from high school in 1980. When who was the Federal Reserve chairman before?
Volcker.
Yeah, Paul Volcker came in, and he was going to break inflation, and interest rates went to 21%.
The prime rate was 20% in 1980, correct? And he did break inflation by causing a huge recession. That's correct.
Yeah, and I had so many friends whose dads and moms had bought wheat farms and dairy farms, and it was their loans were floating 200 basis points over prime. And they went bankrupt. And,
3% is not too sustainable. I agree with you.
So if you're my age, if you're 55 and you walked out of high school during that fiasco, I mean, if someone says adjustable rate mortgage to me, I just cringe. I mean, I think of my classmates on the 9th floor of Swanson Hall at Creighton University crying because their parents were losing the family farm that had been in the business for 3 or 4 years, because they went and used it as collateral to buy a bunch of John Deere stuff. And so I just want to tell you that you never know what's around the corner. And then I graduated May 11, 87, and then you know what happened September or October 87. I mean, you were on TV about it, October 19, 1987. So you just and I'll tell you also, to these kids that are complained that mortgage rates went up to 5%. When I got out of school, after I bought my practice, I decided to buy a home, and I thought I was getting such a killer deal, because the guy who was selling it to me, he had it financed at 14%, and I could lock it in at 12%.
Wow!
I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world, because 1980 it was 21%.
That's right. That's
right. It was like buying a house on a credit card.
Yeah.
And so I thought.
You're right. I never know for sure, but I don't think rates are going back to these double-digit levels. You'd have to have a huge amount of inflation to do that. And there's a lot of deflationary forces in the world still. But I agree with you. Lock in a fixed rate. Don't take the risk. It's not worth it to do an adjustable rate, because if things go back up, you don't want to get crushed like that.
I wish you would go on Dental Town Under Finance and answer some of these questions. It'd be good marketing for you, because you answer the question, but in your signatures, your name, your websites, and you have about 20 websites. A very common question under finance is they're trying to figure out what everyone else is doing. When should they be out of debt, and then how much money? They always say, what is reasonable for me to be debt free, and how much money do I have to sell my office and be retired? That's a complex question.
Well, as far as getting out of debt, I mean, on the mortgage side, the house side, again, I told you a way, mortgage optimization, where you can pay it off in 5 to 7 years, depending on what your numbers look like. So that's reasonable. As far as the dental office, I mean, if you're buying it for $300,000 or $600,000, depends where it's going to be, it should take 10 to 15 years to pay that off, something like that. I mean, just don't be unrealistic. You're going to pay it off in 5 years. You got the cash flow of the business, but then once you've got it, you've got some equity that is producing cash flow, and hopefully you'll be able to sell in the future. I just think it's a different calculus than it had been for previous generations. Imagine the dentists going to school now, okay, who are going to be taking on even more debt and coming out with even bigger debts. I think it's going to be harder for them to buy dental practices in the future. I think people are going to be selling their dental practices to the DSOs for quite a while, which means you get less.
But how much would this dentist have to have? What's the calculation ratio? How much cash or money do I have to have saved before I can sit there and ride off in the sunset and not have to worry about money again?
I would say 10 times your annual gross income would be the amount. So if you're making $300,000, that's like $3 million, something like that, in order to keep a similar kind of lifestyle. Because if you do that, then you can invest it. I mean, I showed you a way to earn 8%, so you're getting regular passive income from that. If you have it in the checking account or savings account earning zero, it doesn't produce any income. But typically, that's a good rule of thumb. 10 times your gross income during your working years to have in capital to produce income, because you're going to live a long time. I mean, people are saying, 65. Well, that's nothing today. People are living easily into their 80s and 90s. So assume you're going to live a long time. One of the biggest problems people face in retirement is outliving their money. They just haven't either invested enough or it's not growing enough to keep them around for a long time. So there's what I call the reverse boomeranger, which is the parents moving back with the kids when the parents run out of money. The boomerangers are the kids coming out of college moving in with the parents because they can't live on their own. So you got the boomerangers and the reverse boomerangers moving into your house.
I don't have to worry about it. I have 4 boys, and they all assured me that I would die before I ran out of money before I died.
Oh, good.
They said, Dad, we will kill you if that's what it takes. Another question I was going to ask. In 2008 and 2009, America was GM, Chrysler, Ford. America was selling about 9 million cars a year. Now it's up to like 15 million cars a year, but 5 million of those are leased. And a lot of dentists say, look how leasing cars are. Obviously, if 5 out of 17 million cars sold in 2017 were leased instead of bought, is leasing smarter than buying?
I think so. In many cases, I've leased my cars. I'm in the process of doing another one. The advantage of leasing is that your monthly payment is less. You can write it off if you use your car for legitimate business expenses. And you're not putting assets into a depreciating asset. The way I like to put it is buy things that appreciate. Stocks, real estate, mutual funds, Bitcoin, whatever it may be. Lease things that depreciate. You know a car is going to go down in value. You may not know how fast, but it's not something that's going to be appreciating over time. So my last 5 cars, I'm about to get another one. Every 3 years or whatever, I get a new updated car. This time I got a hybrid where I didn't have a hybrid before, so it's even more efficient. So in many cases, leasing can make sense. Now, if you're going to hold on to a car for 10 years and run it into the ground for 300,000 miles, leasing doesn't make sense. So in many cases, you have 2 cars in a household. Buy one, drive it into the ground for 300,000 miles, lease the other one, you keep it for relatively short miles. Typically like 15,000 miles a year is what's appropriate for lease. So if that's your circumstance, I think leasing makes sense. Let me give you a resource to get you the best deal on either leasing or financing. There's a car buying service that I use, which is called carq.com, C-A-R, the letter Q.com. They're an objective service that will help you buy a car or lease it, get the best financing deal, get the best price. I'll tell you right now, I'm in the middle of getting a Lexus, and I'm in New York, and they found the best deal in California, and they're going to ship it across the country, and I'm getting $2,000 below dealer's price.
What was the name of that website?
carq.com, carq.com. So they're terrific. They work for you, the consumer, to get you the absolute best deal on the price, on the model, on the options, whether you buy it, finance it, lease it. This is something you do every 5 years or whatever. You're not very good at it. The people in the car dealerships know all the tricks, and you don't have a chance, basically, is what it comes down to.
I'm going to ask you a politically incorrect question.
Go for it.
But on Dental Town, if anybody gets the bears out crawling, it's when some dentist goes on the finance section and posts something from Jim Rogers, who's saying, the worst crash ever is coming. What do you think of Jim Rogers and his? I mean, I don't want
know Jim. I know Jim. He was right on commodities. He proposed a big commodity boom before it happened, so that was right. But he's been proposing a bear market for several years, and he's missed out on the greatest bull market in human history, basically. So, at some point in the future, we have to take a big downer. But the fundamentals right now are really supporting the stock market continuing to go up. Earnings have been very strong. The tax bill is just starting to kick in, increasing profitability for companies. People are getting more money in their paychecks. So the tax bill is really kicking in. We're having a lot of stimulus between the tax bill, the infrastructure bill, if we get that, the spending bill. So, yes, we're adding a lot of debt, but I don't see it coming for at least 5 years, something like that. So you would have missed out on an awful lot of profit opportunity had you followed Jim Rogers for the last few years.
Yeah. So, good guy. You like that guy?
He's a fun guy. He's big on motorcycling. He likes to motorcycle.
Well, what I noticed it from many aspects of my life, whether it be growing up, my parents were big in the Catholic Church, finance, getting my MBA. It's like if you go to the Christian community, 20% think the end of the world's coming and 80% don't. You go down to Wall Street, 20% think the whole thing's going to crash and buy gold, and 80% don't. So I think it's more of a human phenomenon. It's almost more of a personality trait. Some people see the glass. Some people see growth. And the reason I do is because if I flip back every 100-year history all the way back to the Great Pyramid, I mean, it just keeps getting better and better and better and better and better. Right. Hell, I graduated in college. I graduated in dental school 30 years ago and never seen a computer. Right. Now I have a computer in my phone that has more computing power than the Apollo mission that landed on the moon. Correct. I mean, I just think we're going in the right direction century by century. Now, a lot of times with humans, in countries, it's usually 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I just don't see the end of humanity around.
And certainly don't act on it. I mean, let's put it this way: if we all go down, there's going to be no place to hide anyway. And having a piece of gold is not going to save you. What are you going to do? Go to your local grocery store and shave off a little bit of gold for your milk? I mean, it's not going to help you very much.
Oh, and it has no utility. Just no utility. Right. I mean,
so if you're leaving Venezuela today or Zimbabwe to get out before you get murdered, then yes, have gold in your socks. It's what I call refugee mentality. Okay, if you're the last one on the helicopter getting out of Vietnam, yes, gold is a great way to kind of bring value with you. But for most people, I just don't think, maybe 5% of your money in gold, but nothing too significant, yes.
I always think it's funny how they're trying to have saved up a year's worth of food in their basement for this catastrophe. It's like, dude, the scenarios, the zombie apocalypse, all the people coming down the street trying to steal your... There's going to be so many dead bodies in the streets. You just drag one back to your charcoal and an arm and a leg. You certainly don't need a year's worth of food if all these millions of monkeys are dying. You just need to learn how to eat monkey. So do you ever do you have any thoughts on taxes?
I do. Now there's the new tax law can be extremely positive for dentists if they're set up in the right way. You want to be what's so-called pass-through entity, meaning subchapter S, limited liability corporation, limited partnership. Those are the big three. And the first 20% of your income is tax deductible now. So it's a really big tax break for people. Also, they've expanded the kind of pensions you can do. There's all kinds of ways of putting money aside. So yes, I mean, take full advantage of the tax bill. The reason it was done was to stimulate small businesses. And dentists are small businesses. And if they do well, they should hire more people and buy more equipment and help the economy in various ways. So this is the best of times as far as tax bill. Take full advantage of it. You never know how long these things are going to last. If the Democrats get in, they'd want to wipe it all away. I don't think that's going to happen, but we know what's happening now, so take full advantage of it.
Yeah, everybody, the news media is just infatuated with the S&P 500, especially the big stocks, and they don't realize the backbone of every economy in every country in the world. 80% of people work for a small business, 25 employees or less. And, think, Dennis, you're driving to work. How many people in your family work for Facebook, Apple, Netflix, Google? Everybody works for a business about the size of a damn dental office. 25 employees or less doing about $1 million. That's America.
That's
But
correct.
only Apple and Facebook get all the headlines. You know,
But
everybody wants to.
the tax bill made major incentives for the small businesses that are the backbone of America to do better. And that's where all the growth, I mean, big companies continue to lay off for the most part, but the small and medium-sized companies is where the growth is. So it was a very well-targeted tax cut to help those businesses increase their cash flow and hopefully use it to reinvest back in the business and grow.
I want to ask a bizarre question, but it just seems like it just, I know my homies. I mean, I've been a dentist for 30 years. I've been in dental town all day, every day. I mean, they get A's in math, physics, chemistry. But when it comes to money, it seems like math and physics goes out the window. It's so emotional.
It is.
Do you think humans are more emotional about money than algebra and geometry and trig?
Absolutely.
And why is that?
The emotions of greed and fear come in. When the market's doing really well, your greed hormones are kind of going really racing. I want to get in on the action. You just saw what happened with cryptocurrencies. When it went from 7,000 to 10,000 to 15,000 to 19,000, that's when people were borrowing against their credit cards to get in, right? Greed, greed, greed. And then it can switch very quickly to fear. It's like I'm worried about losing my money, and your hormones go the complete opposite direction, I guess you might say. So you don't have that in calculus or in geometry. It's much more rational. So fear and greed are the two extremes. I mean, what Warren Buffett always said is, when everybody else is greedy, you should be fearful. When everybody else is fearful, you should be greedy. And it's nice to say that. It's hard to do it psychologically. I mean, it would be hard to have been buying like crazy in 2008 when the market was falling apart. In the long run, that would have been a great deal. But, that's psychological. I would say psychologically it's easy to buy high when everything's going great and sell low when things are terrible, but you just don't make a lot of money that way. So you got to kind of counteract your natural emotional forces. I actually did a book on this, Howard, called Master Your Money Type, about people's financial personalities and how it gets in their way of doing the right kind of financial decisions.
So if my homies listening to you had to buy one book from you, because you have so many, would it be Dictionary of Finance and Investment Terms, Barron's Business Dictionary on Amazon with 56 five-star reviews? Would that be your go-to book?
Well, that's just defining the terms of the field, which a lot of people have no clue what they're. And I've heard this many times from the dentists at these events. In dental school, they don't tell us anything about how to run the business, how to set up a pension plan, anything about the finances. It's all about what's in the mouth, okay? Well, that's nice, but like having one course or something about how to help people, their businesses and run the business would be nice. So the dictionary will at least explain the basic terms of finance and investment, which can be a barrier for an awful lot of people. I would say that would be a good one. Fast Profits in Hard Times. I go through all kinds of different strategies to help people, no matter what's going on in the economy. And then we talked about Master Your Debt. Since debt is such a big issue for dentists, that helps people. We talked about the mortgage optimization, getting your credit score and report in good ways. So that would be another good one that could help people.
Yeah, that's Master Your Debt. Slash your monthly payments and become debt-free by Jordan E. Goodman. 23 five-star reviews. What does the E stand for in Goodman? My middle initial is E. Mine's for Eugene. What's yours?
Elliot. My father was Elliot. My father was a professor at Brown University, and so it's Elliot. So my middle initial is Elliot.
Well, I'll remember that because my dental office is on the corner of 48th Street. And Elliot.
Excellent.
Was my street named after your grandfather?
Probably. That was my father.
Your father?
Not. He grew up in Indianapolis. I'll tell you a fun story. His father, my grandfather, made the silk stockings in the 1920s. He made an absolute fortune. It's called the silk stocking era. Well, my grandfather made all the silk stockings. He imported silk from Japan. He had a factory with 10,000 workers, and they made all the silk stockings. So that's where my ultimate family fortune came from, silk stockings.
And it's amazing because silk, back in the last 1,000 years, only the very rich could have it.
Right.
And then the poor man's silk was sheep's wool. But right. Wool was scratchy, and everybody wished they could have silk like the king and the queen, but they had to have this wool. And that was one of the reasons America had such a financial boom, because they got into cotton. and cotton substituted wool as the poor man's silk because cotton was smooth and didn't scratch your skin. And people don't realize that the real basis of America's economy was that brutal cotton industry, because that's where the base economy was, and the profits from that is what started Wall Street and investing in factories.
Exactly.
So the whole North was banking, insurance, and financing off cotton money, and so that's a.
And then my grandfather in the 30s, when Japan got kind of dicey and they couldn't import the silk anymore, he met a guy named Mr. DuPont who came up with something called nylon. And so he was the first one to do nylon stockings after he couldn't do silk anymore. So he was always doing innovation. So that's in my blood, is innovation and entrepreneurship.
So your main website is moneyanswers.com. What
take emails. So at that website, I've got all kinds of what I call the resource center, where we're just giving a small example here, but
are all those websites that you mentioned, are they all found on here?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Good. Okay.
So I've got resources on debt and credit, on mortgages, on investing, on insurance, on all different kinds of areas. I've got little videos I've done about these things, interviews with the people that do these things. My Money Answers show, I'm going to put this show on my website under podcasts. I do take emails, so it's a kind of a general center of helping people in all aspects of personal finance. Love doing it.
You know, the only thing that I love your website, except for one thing. You know, the only thing that confused about your website.
What is that?
I don't know why. I'm always curious where you live. There's no city or address on your website. So
it's there at the very bottom. I live in Westchester, New York. Yeah.
I don't see it.
But anyway, it's there.
So where are you at?
I'm in Elmsford, New York, which is Westchester, near Tarrytown, where the Tappan Zee Bridge goes over the Hudson River.
So how far are you from Manhattan?
About 45 minutes drive. No big deal. Because I go in there all the time to do TV and radio shows.
Yeah. God, I love Manhattan. That is just. I read a deal the other day that if all 7.5 billion humans lived at the density of Manhattan, all of us could live on New Zealand.
I wouldn't want to live there.
You wouldn't want to live in Manhattan? And why would you not want to live in Manhattan?
Well, today it's just for billionaires, basically. I mean, the prices are just beyond outrageous. The taxes. I like being in Westchester, where it's nice and calm and everything. And then I go into the city as I need for Broadway shows or meetings or radio or TV shows. To me, I've got the best of both worlds that way.
Did you see the play Hamilton?
Yes, fantastic.
That was America's
really
first.
Follow it carefully, because it's that hip-hop rap kind of thing. But if you listen carefully, it's a fantastic story.
And tell these young kids why. Hamilton was about America's first banking and finance, wasn't he?
He was the first Treasury Secretary, and he basically came up with the not the Federal Reserve, the United States Treasury, basically, and came up with the whole system. And he had the duel with Aaron Burr, and he was one of the major founding fathers. He was an orphan. He came from the Caribbean. He had a really interesting history, but very, very influential in our whole financial structure.
Yeah, that was I tried to. The play came to Phoenix. It's playing right now for 2 weeks at Arizona State University Gammage Theater, but they sold out. So I went online to find people selling their tickets. Cheapest ticket I could find in the nosebleed was $1,100 a ticket.
It's worth
every
it. Go
time I've lectured in New York since that play's been out, I went up to the deal to buy a ticket, and they're like, "Dude, it's sold out 6 months in advance."
Correct.
So I still have not had the opportunity to see that play. My gosh, I can't believe it's already been 55 minutes. Any questions I'm not smart enough to be asking you that I should have asked? Or
let me just do 2 more quick resources to help people, because I really like to help these dentists. First one, if they've got a lot of debt as a business, we talked about the individual as a business, they should use the strategy of what's called debt prioritization, because not all creditors are equal. Some creditors have more power over your business than others. If the electric company turns off your lights tomorrow, you're done. Okay, that's got a lot of priority over you. But if you had some lawyer do a contract 3 years ago, he has no leverage over you whatsoever. Okay, so you want to use a system, what's called debt prioritization, and you pay creditors based on how much leverage they've got over your business. Now, you can try to do that on your own. There's a website that can help people do that, which is called helpwithpayables.com. And what they do is they look at all your creditors and leverage and see a leverage ratio of each. You make one payment to them, they pay the creditors, and you can get out of business debt much quicker and easier without trying to do it yourself. Because what typically happens is the creditor that screams the loudest gets paid, and they often should not be the one that gets paid first. It should be the one with the most leverage over your business. So that may help some of the dentists who have a lot of business debt. And then kind of related to that is you want to stay on top of your business credit report. You have a Dun & Bradstreet report, and a lot of people have no idea what's in it. They don't really pay much attention to it. When you apply for credit, just like on the individual side, you want it to be as clean as possible. And a website that can help you there is called Tour de Business, Tourde business.com. They'll help you establish or clean up your business credit report. So those are just a few more resources that can help you run your business more efficiently.
But just to be clear, every website resource you've listed, they could find at moneyanswers.com?
Correct. It's called the Resource Center, and you'll see it all right there. I've got a little video and explanation of all of them, and more than we talked about. But I tried to do the ones that are relevant to dentists.
Resource Center, recommended resources, debit and credit, mortgages, insurance, investing, LifeLock.
You'll see them all, and on there you'll see a little
what's
description.
LifeLock?
LifeLock is a way to protect yourself against ID theft, which is a huge problem these days. Often it's not something you're doing wrong, but people get your information. I mean, what happened last year with Equifax was just a complete tragedy, okay? The ID thieves got in there, and they got your basic information, your name, your social security number, your date of birth, your mother's maiden name, all these things. And then once they've got that, they can create false accounts in your names, open credit, do all kinds of nefarious things. When you have LifeLock, they tell you, did you just open this credit card account, or did you just take out a $10,000 cash advance from an ATM in Las Vegas, whatever it may be, and you say, no, that wasn't me, and they can stop it right away. So that's what LifeLock's about.
And I just want to say one thing. There's also a section for speaking engagements. I want to tell you, the hardest gig to get in speaking is an annual Seattle Study Club meeting. And then you got that gig. Then how many Seattle Study Clubs did you lecture for?
It's been about 15 so far.
Yeah, I mean that's you don't have to say anything else. I mean that's just impossible to get. They vet their speakers more than anyone. So there's also a link on there if you want to have you to be this.
I'd love to speak to dentist groups. I really do. I'm actually writing now for the Seattle Study Club Journal on a quarterly basis as well. So I'm really very, very helpful. It's just been great.
Is that a magazine or is that on their website?
It's a journal. It's a physical journal that they put out once a quarter. And I'm now doing financial article for them once a quarter as well. So I love helping dentists. And if any of your listeners, I would love to, they could contact me at moneyanswers.com, and I'd love to speak to their groups.
All right. Well, on that note, I want to thank you so much for coming on my show today. And speaking to my homies for an hour about money. Dennis, I know you only want to learn about root canals, fillings, and crowns. I get it. I'm a dentist. Hell, I'd rather pull 4 wisdom teeth than go golf in Palm Springs. I mean, really. I mean, I totally get it. And that's why, as a leader, I'm trying to take you away from that candy bowl and point you at that weird stuff under the sink that you got to do. And you don't know your numbers. You don't know your finance. You don't know your business. And another thing that you're always trying to spend $150,000 on a CAD cam, $100,000 on a lathe. I mean, and you don't even realize the true cost of that. I mean, if you were 30 years old and you bought a $150,000 CAD cam, what would that money be if they would have put that in an index fund, $150,000 at age 30 at an index fund? What would that be when they were 65?
A lot. Well, I mean, if over 40 years, 150,000 would be about 450,000, something like that.
Yeah. So that CAD cam machine, is that really worth not having $500,000 extra cash when you're 65? Right. and then you know, some people do root plane curettage, but you got to buy a $100,000 laser to do it, and these toys, and then the big financial disaster is you think your dental assistant's so hot, so then you divorce your wife to get to marry your damn hygienist, and now you lost half of everything you own. So you just
don't do that.
Yeah, just be smart with your money, and I'd rather you get an A in money and B on your dental work than sit there and get a B on your money and an A on your dental work, because it just means you're going to just work harder and harder and harder. Now, I'll end with this. The happiest dentists I know at my age are the ones that do dentistry that don't have to.
Mm-hmm.
And the unhappiest ones are the ones that know they have to drive to work Monday through Friday for another decade because their house is not in order. And it's just a site. We were talking about money so emotional. Man,
Right.
when you don't have to work, then you love it. And if you don't want to treat screaming kids, you send them to a pediatric dentist. If you don't want to do molar endo, they're called endodontists. Whatever you don't want to do, you just refer out because it doesn't matter. Then you only start doing what you want to do. So when you don't have to work, you love to work. But when you have to work, you can burn out. What percent of dentists burnout do you think is related to finances?
80%.
Yeah, I know, 80%. And then they make these flippant decisions that they're going to go buy all these fancy toys and all this stuff like that. Get your house in order. And every human I personally know does not have an earnings problem. They all have a spending problem. I don't care if they're kids in college. I mean, these student loan debts. Next time one of them's telling you, crying crocodile tears about his student loan debts. Dude, I didn't have a car in undergrad at Creighton University. I didn't have a car the first 3 years of dental school. You drive to these dental schools, it looks like a new car lot for Honda. And on vacations, what did we do? We hitched a ride home back to Wichita and stay with mom and dad. What do? They get in jet airplanes and take cruises and go to fancy beaches and oceans and.
Well, they deserve it, you see.
Oh yeah, and they ate out sushi every Friday night when we were eating ramen noodles, cooking it in a Holly hot pot. I mean, and it doesn't matter what. Remember the Charles Keating scandal?
Oh yeah.
And when he went under, everybody was trying to find his money. He had none. He owned islands and yachts and airplanes and people are looking at, my God, he made more money than anybody could win in the lottery every year for decades. And when the market turned down, he had nothing.
Right. So the point is the dentists are really smart, but they have to pay a little more attention to what we've talked about. I mean, just look at what we've talked about in this last hour or so. We've paid off their mortgages faster. We got them earning 8%. We got them out of business debt. Got their credit scores in better shape. Got their student loans refinanced. I mean, there's lots of good things. These are like 1 or 2 minute kind of things you could do. Just set it up and have things automatically work for you. What a better life, as you say. And then you can do what you want to do instead of what you have to do.
And we convince them to keep their spouse because it's just not worth it. It's just cheaper to keep her. That's all I can say. Cheaper to keep her. But, hey, on that note, Jordan, thank you so much for coming on the show. I hope you have a rocking hot day.
Thanks so much, Howard. Really appreciate it.